Stop. Just stop for a moment. You have probably heard the words quantum manifestation before, and maybe you thought it was complicated. Something that required perfect energy, special rituals, endless affirmations, or some secret knowledge that only a few people understood. But what if the truth is much simpler? What if you have been trying to manifest your life in the hardest possible way, while the real shift begins with something you already do every single day? You think. You choose. You expect. And then you act. That sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But stay with me, because this is where most people miss the entire point. You don't struggle because manifestation is impossible. You struggle because one part of you says, I want this, while another part quietly says, but what if it never happens? And that second voice changes everything. You may say you want a better life, but then wake up expecting another bad day. You may say you want abundance, but spend your time thinking about what you don't have. You may say you're ready for change, but secretly hold on to the identity that was created by your past. This is the hidden conflict. Your words may point in one direction, while your attention, emotions, habits, and choices point somewhere completely different. And this is why manifestation can feel like it's not working. Not because you are broken, not because the universe has rejected you, but because you are sending two different signals at the same time. Imagine standing in front of a radio and turning the dial between two stations. One moment you hear music, the next moment, static, then music again, then static. You wouldn't blame the radio. You would simply say, the signal isn't clear. Your inner world can work the same way. You say, I'm ready. Then fear says, no, you're not. You say, I trust my future. Then your mind says, but what if I fail? You say, something better is coming. Then you spend the entire day watching for proof that nothing is changing. That is where the real battle begins. And here's what makes this even more interesting. You don't need to become a completely different person overnight. You don't need to force yourself to feel positive every second. You don't need to pretend that fear doesn't exist. You simply need to understand which version of you is making the decisions. Because your future isn't shaped only by what you say you want. It is shaped by what you repeatedly expect, focus on, believe, and choose. And once you understand that, manifestation suddenly becomes much less mysterious. You begin to notice something. The life you keep calling far away may actually be waiting for you to stop behaving like the old version of yourself. Think about the moments when your life changed before. Maybe you walked away from something that was hurting you. Maybe you finally started learning something you had been afraid to begin. Maybe you stopped chasing someone's approval. Maybe one morning, you simply decided, I'm not living like this anymore. Nothing magical had to explode in the sky, but something inside you changed. Your choices changed. Your attention changed. Your standards changed. And slowly, your reality began responding to those changes. This is the part people often overlook. They want the result first. They want the new relationship before becoming emotionally ready for it. They want financial freedom before changing how they handle opportunities. They want confidence before taking the first uncomfortable step. They want the new identity while still protecting the old one. But life keeps asking the same question. Who are you being while you wait? That question may be more powerful than any affirmation. Because your future is not only something you receive. It is something you repeatedly move toward. And you may already be closer than you think. Maybe the reason this message found you today is not because you need another complicated technique. Maybe you simply need to stop fighting yourself. Take a breath. Look at what you have been expecting. Look at what you have been repeating. Look at the choices you make when nobody is watching. And ask yourself one honest question. If the version of me who already had the life I want walked into this room right now, what would they do differently? Don't answer too quickly. Because your first answer may be logical. Your second answer may be uncomfortable. But your third answer, that might be where the real shift begins. You are not waiting for your life to begin. You are training yourself to recognize the life you are ready to build. And once that becomes clear, the next part changes everything. Now let us go deeper. Because there is something even more important than knowing what you want. You have to understand what you are practicing every day without realizing it. Your mind is always practicing something. Every time you replay an old failure, you practice the feeling of failure. Every time you imagine someone rejecting you before they even speak, you practice rejection. Every time you tell yourself, People like me never get opportunities. You strengthen that expectation. And every time you imagine yourself handling a difficult moment with calmness, courage, and clarity, you are practicing something completely different. This is where the idea of manifestation becomes practical. You are not simply wishing for a different future. You are repeatedly becoming familiar with one. Think about a person who has lived in fear for years. A new opportunity appears. On the outside, it looks perfect. But inside, something feels wrong. Not because the opportunity is wrong, because it is unfamiliar. The old version of that person knows how to survive disappointment. It knows how to expect rejection. It knows how to stay small. But confidence, success, peace, those things feel strange. And when something feels strange, the mind often tries to return to what feels familiar. This is why people sometimes sabotage the very thing they say they want. They get close to a breakthrough. Then suddenly they hesitate. They receive an opportunity. Then they convince themselves they aren't ready. Someone appreciates them. Then they start looking for reasons not to trust it. A door opens, and they spend so much time wondering whether they deserve to walk through it that the moment passes. But here's the truth. Your mind doesn't always choose what is best. It often chooses what is familiar. And that means your first task isn't to force your future into existence. Your first task is to become comfortable with the possibility of it. Imagine standing in front of a massive golden door. Behind it is everything you've been asking for. Peace, purpose, freedom. A life that feels like yours. The door is open, but you are standing outside. Not because it is locked, because part of you is still looking backward. You keep checking the old road. You keep asking whether you should return. You keep remembering every time things went wrong. And while you're doing that, the open door is right in front of you. This is what happens when your attention remains trapped in the past while your words keep asking for a new future. You cannot move forward while constantly rehearsing backward. So what do? You don't pretend the past never happened. You simply stop using it as a prediction. That failed relationship happened. That missed opportunity happened. That rejection happened. That difficult season happened. But none of those events automatically deserve to become your forecast. Your past can explain you, but it does not have to command you. And this is where your power becomes practical. The next time something doesn't go the way you hoped, notice the first story your mind creates. Does it say, "See, nothing ever works for me"? Or does it say, "This didn't work, so what can I learn from it"? Those two responses may look small, but they create completely different directions. One closes the door. The other keeps searching for another one. And you don't need to feel powerful every day. You don't need perfect confidence. You only need to stop making your fear the final authority. Fear can speak. Doubt can speak. Your past can speak. But they don't have to make the decision. You can listen and still choose. That is where change begins. Not when you finally become fearless, but when you stop letting fear choose your future. Your future changes the moment your old story stops making your decisions. Now take a moment and think about the thing you have been asking for. Don't imagine the perfect final result yet. Instead, imagine the person who could naturally live that reality. How do they respond when something goes wrong? How do they treat themselves? What do they no longer chase? What do they finally allow themselves to believe? And most importantly, what would they stop doing? Because sometimes manifestation isn't about adding another ritual. Sometimes it is about removing the habit that keeps pulling you back. The constant checking. The constant worrying. The constant need for proof. The endless question. When will it happen? What if you replace that question with something more useful? What can I do today that matches the life I'm asking for? Now the idea becomes real. You are no longer sitting around waiting for a mysterious sign. You are participating. You are choosing. You are responding differently. And little by little, your identity begins to catch up with your intention. But there is still one hidden mistake that causes people to lose momentum. And once you see it, you may realize you've been making it without even knowing. This is where the real shift begins. You stop saying, "I will be happy when I get it." You stop saying, "I will feel successful when everyone recognizes me." You stop saying, "I will finally feel enough when my life looks different." Because if your sense of worth always depends on something outside you changing first, you will spend your entire life waiting. And waiting creates a strange trap. You keep telling yourself that your future is coming, but emotionally, you keep living as though it is far away. So instead of asking, when will my life change? Ask something deeper. How can I live today in a way that respects the person I am becoming? That question brings manifestation back to earth. It turns an idea into behavior. If you want peace, where can you stop creating unnecessary chaos? If you want confidence, where can you stop abandoning yourself? If you want abundance, where can you start becoming more responsible with what you already have? If you want meaningful relationships, where can you become more honest about what you actually need? You don't have to wait for the final result to begin practicing the identity connected to it. Think about someone learning to play an instrument. They don't become a musician on the day they perform perfectly. They become one through repetition. One note, one mistake, one practice session, then another. The identity grows through action. Your life can change the same way. You don't suddenly wake up one morning as a completely transformed person. You become that person through hundreds of small choices that nobody else sees. And this is why your ordinary moments matter so much. The way you speak to yourself after making a mistake matters. The way you respond when someone disappoints you matters. The way you handle money matters. The way you spend your time matters. The things you repeatedly watch, think about, and give your attention to matter. Because attention is not neutral. What you repeatedly focus on becomes easier for your mind to notice. If you spend every day looking for reasons that life is against you, your mind becomes very good at finding them. But if you begin looking for possibilities, lessons, opportunities, and choices, you start noticing those too. The world may not have suddenly become different. Your attention became different. And that difference can change what you do next. This is one reason the idea of a quantum shift can feel so powerful as a metaphor. A shift can look enormous from the outside, but it may begin with something almost invisible. A thought you no longer believe. A reaction you no longer repeat. A boundary you finally set. A decision you stop postponing. A door you finally walk through. And nobody may clap for you. Nobody may even notice. But you will know. Because something inside you will say, I don't do that anymore. That sentence can be more powerful than 1,000 motivational quotes. I don't do that anymore. I don't chase people who make me question my worth. I don't turn every setback into a prediction. I don't abandon my goals because the first attempt failed. I don't need everyone to understand my path. I don't keep asking for permission to become who I want to be. This is where your identity starts becoming stronger than your circumstances. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to hate your old self to become your new self. That old version of you is trying to survive. It learned from what happened. It built defenses. It developed habits. It tried to protect you. You can thank that version of yourself and still move beyond it. Imagine walking through a long desert. For years, you believed there was nothing beyond the horizon. Then one day, you see something in the distance. A light. At first, you think it might be an illusion. You keep walking. The light becomes clearer. Then you realize there is a city beyond the desert. You don't magically appear there. You still have to walk. But everything changes the moment you know where you're going. The desert hasn't disappeared. The distance hasn't disappeared. But your relationship with the journey has changed. You no longer walk without direction. You walk with intention. And that is what you are learning to do. Not control every event. Not predict every outcome. Not force every person to behave exactly the way you want. You are learning to control the direction of your own attention, choices, and actions. That is a much deeper kind of power. Because circumstances can change. People can change. Plans can change. But the person making your next decision, that person is still you. So take a breath. Think about one area of your life where you have been waiting for permission. Maybe you are waiting for the perfect moment. Maybe you are waiting until you feel confident. Maybe you are waiting until someone believes in you. Maybe you are waiting for a sign. What if the sign is simply the decision you already know you need to make? Not tomorrow. Not someday. One small decision today. Because your next chapter may not begin with something spectacular. It may begin quietly. With you choosing differently when you could have repeated the same old pattern. And once you make that choice, you may discover something you were never taught. Manifestation was never about becoming powerful enough to control reality. It was about becoming clear enough to stop working against yourself. And there is still one final question. If you truly believe your future can be different, what are you willing to stop carrying into it? Because sometimes the next version of your life isn't waiting for you to add more. It's waiting for you to finally let something go. The hidden mistake is simple. You keep checking whether it is working. You make a decision, take a step forward, and then immediately look around for evidence. Did anything change? Is it happening yet? Where is the sign? Why hasn't it appeared? And without realizing it, you turn your attention away from the direction you chose and back toward the absence of what you want. This is where many people lose their momentum. Imagine planting a seed in the ground. You water it today. Then tomorrow, you dig it up to see if the roots have started growing. You put it back. The next day, you dig it up again. You wouldn't call the seed weak. You would understand that you never gave it enough time to grow. Your inner transformation can work in a similar way. You make a decision. You change your behavior. You begin thinking differently. Then you become impatient because the outside world hasn't changed fast enough. So you return to the old identity. You start doubting. You start forcing. You start looking for proof. And suddenly, the energy that was moving forward becomes focused on what is missing. But here's something important. This does not mean you should sit still and wait for life to magically deliver everything to you. Quite the opposite. Manifestation becomes powerful when intention meets action. If you want a new career, you still have to learn. If you want a healthier relationship, you still have to communicate. If you want financial growth, you still have to make better decisions. If you want confidence, you have to give yourself opportunities to practice being confident. The inner shift gives direction. Your actions give it movement. Think about a compass. A compass can tell you which way north is, but it cannot walk for you. Your intention is the direction. Your choices are the movement. And your consistency is what keeps you from turning around every time the road becomes difficult. This is why simplicity is both the beauty and the problem. The principle can be simple, but simple does not mean easy. You already know that you should focus on what matters. You already know you should stop feeding every fear. You already know you should take action. You already know that constantly comparing your life to someone else's life destroys your peace. The difficulty is not knowing. The difficulty is doing it repeatedly, because the old version of you will keep asking for another chance. It will whisper, "Just go back. You're safer here. What if you fail? What will people think?" And sometimes that voice sounds so reasonable that you believe it. But you have to learn the difference between a warning and a habit. Not every fearful thought is wisdom. Sometimes it is simply an old pattern trying to protect itself. And once you understand that, you stop fighting every thought. You observe it. You breathe. And then you choose. That small pause can change the entire direction of your day. Something happens. You feel triggered. The old you reacts. But this time, you wait. You ask yourself, who do I want to be in this moment? And you respond from that place. That is real transformation, not a dramatic moment, not some perfect morning where everything suddenly becomes effortless. It is the quiet decision you make when nobody is watching. The decision to stop repeating what keeps hurting you. The decision to stop begging for what does not respect you. The decision to stop calling yourself incapable. The decision to stop treating your past like a permanent sentence. And slowly, something strange begins to happen. Your environment may not change immediately, but you do. You notice opportunities you once ignored. You speak differently. You set different boundaries. You stop chasing certain people. You become willing to try things that once terrified you. And because your behavior has changed, the results around you can begin to change too. This is where people sometimes call it a miracle. But look closer. The miracle may have started much earlier. At the exact moment you decided to stop being the person who kept choosing the same reality. You didn't need to control everything. You needed to control the next choice. That's it. One choice. Then another. Then another. And eventually, those choices become a pattern. The pattern becomes a habit. The habit becomes part of your identity. And your identity influences the life you continue building. So the question is no longer, how do I force my manifestation to happen? The better question is, what am I repeatedly becoming? Because whatever you practice becomes easier to repeat. And whatever becomes easier to repeat begins to feel normal. This is why your new life may feel uncomfortable at first. Not because it is wrong, but because it is new. The first time you say no without feeling guilty. The first time you choose yourself without explaining. The first time you take an opportunity without waiting for permission. The first time you believe something good could actually happen to you. It may feel strange. Let it feel strange. You are not failing. You are adjusting. And there is one final piece to this that most people completely misunderstand. They think manifestation begins when they get the thing. But what if it begins when they stop needing the thing to prove their worth? That changes everything. Because now you are no longer chasing a future version of yourself. You are beginning to live as that person today. And once you understand that, the next step becomes much more powerful. The practice is simple, but don't mistake simple for weak. Every morning, before you touch your phone, take a few quiet moments. Breathe slowly, and ask yourself 3 questions. What am I choosing today? What am I giving my attention to? And what would the person I'm becoming do next? That's it. Don't spend an hour trying to create the perfect feeling. Don't force yourself to believe something you don't believe yet. Just choose your direction. Then throughout the day, whenever you notice yourself returning to an old pattern, pause. Take one breath. And ask, is this taking me toward the life I want? Or back toward the life I'm trying to leave? That question can become your reset button. You don't have to win every moment. You don't have to catch every negative thought. You don't have to become perfectly disciplined. You simply need to notice when you are moving away from yourself and choose again. Again. And again. This is where consistency becomes more powerful than intensity. One incredible day won't transform your entire life, but hundreds of ordinary days where you keep choosing differently, those can. You may not notice the change at first. Then one day, you look back and realize something. You don't react the way you used to. You don't chase what you used to chase. You don't fear the same things. You don't need the same approval. You don't recognize the person who once believed they had no choice. And that is the moment you understand. The shift was happening long before the results became visible. It was happening every time you chose patience instead of panic. Every time you chose action instead of endless thinking. Every time you chose self-respect instead of attention. Every time you chose possibility instead of automatically expecting failure. That is why nobody can do this for you. Someone can inspire you. Someone can teach you. Someone can remind you. But nobody else can make your next decision. That part belongs to you. And maybe that is the most empowering part of all. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait until everyone understands. You don't have to wait until fear disappears. You can begin with one choice. Today. Right where you are. Look at the life around you. There may still be problems. There may still be unanswered questions. There may still be doors you don't know how to open. That's okay. You don't need every answer before taking the next step. You need enough courage to take the step you can see. And once you take it, another step becomes visible. Then another. Then another. Until one day, you realize you are standing somewhere you once only imagined. Not because you controlled every event. Not because everything went according to plan. But because you kept moving. You kept learning. You kept adjusting. You kept choosing. And you stopped abandoning your future every time the present became uncomfortable. So if you remember nothing else from this entire message, remember this. Manifestation is not about begging reality to give you a different life. It is about becoming intentional enough to participate in creating one. Your thoughts matter. Your attention matters. Your emotions matter. Your habits matter. Your actions matter. And your choices matter most when nobody is watching. Because that is where identity is built. That is where the future begins. So tonight, choose one thing. One belief you are ready to release. One action you are ready to take. One pattern you are ready to stop repeating. And one direction you are ready to follow. You don't need to transform everything at once. You just need to stop telling yourself that nothing can change. Because the moment you stop believing that your past is your permanent future, possibility enters the room. And possibility gives you a choice. Then choice gives you action. Action creates experience. Experience builds confidence. And confidence makes the next choice easier. That is how the cycle changes. Quietly. Naturally. One decision at a time. You don't manifest a new life by waiting for it. You begin it by choosing differently today. So take a breath. Look at where you are. Then look at where you are going. You may not be there yet, but you are no longer standing in the same place. And that matters, because the future you keep imagining isn't asking you to become perfect. It is asking you to become consistent. Choose again tomorrow. Then the next day. Then the day after that. And when doubt returns, don't panic. When fear returns, don't assume you have failed. When life surprises you, don't immediately return to the old story. Pause. Breathe. Choose again. That is the practice. That is the shift. And perhaps the simplest truth is this: your life can change without you becoming someone completely different. Sometimes you only need to stop doing the things that keep you disconnected from who you already know you can be. So don't wait for a perfect sign. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you feel completely ready. Take the next honest step. Then let the next step reveal itself. Because your new chapter may already be closer than you think. And it may begin with something incredibly simple. A decision. Yours. Now you are standing at the most important threshold. Because letting go is not always about losing something. Sometimes it means letting go of the story you created around it. You can let go of the belief that you are always behind. You can let go of the idea that everyone else gets opportunities before you. You can let go of the need to know exactly how everything will happen. You can let go of the habit of checking your life against someone else's timeline. And most importantly, you can let go of the belief that you have to become perfect before you deserve a better life. You don't. You only need to become more honest with yourself. Think about the way you normally react when something goes wrong. Do you immediately assume the worst? Do you tell yourself that this always happens? Do you start imagining everything falling apart? Or can you pause and say, maybe I don't know the ending yet? That sentence creates space, and space gives you a choice. Instead of reacting from fear, you can respond from intention. Instead of closing the door, you can wait long enough to see whether another one is opening. Instead of treating uncertainty as proof that something is wrong, you can recognize that uncertainty is simply part of not knowing what comes next. This is where trust becomes important. Not blind trust. Not the belief that everything will magically happen exactly when you want it. Real trust. The kind that says, I don't know exactly how this will unfold, but I know I can handle the next step. That is enough. You don't need the entire map. You need the next direction. And this is why the simplest manifestation practice may also be one of the hardest. Choose what you want. Become clear about why you want it. Notice the thoughts that constantly pull you away from it. Change the actions that keep repeating the old pattern. Then keep moving without demanding proof every 5 minutes. That's it. No complicated ritual. No perfect morning routine. No need to force yourself into constant positivity. Just clarity. Alignment. Action. And consistency. But there is one more thing you can practice. Tonight, before you sleep, close your eyes for a moment. Don't imagine some impossible fantasy. Instead, picture an ordinary day in the life you are building. Where do you wake up? How do you feel? What does your morning look like? How do you speak to yourself? What kind of work are you doing? Who is around you? What are you no longer worried about? Don't focus only on the final reward. Focus on the feeling of living differently. Then ask yourself, what is one thing that version of me would do tomorrow? Maybe the answer is small. Make the call. Start the project. Study for 30 minutes. Apply for the opportunity. Walk away from something unhealthy. Have the difficult conversation. Save the money. Take care of yourself. Whatever it is. Write it down. Then do it. Because imagination without action becomes escape. But imagination followed by aligned action becomes direction. And direction repeated long enough can change a life. This is where the word quantum becomes useful as a metaphor. A tiny shift can create a completely different path. One decision can change who you meet. One conversation can create an opportunity. One application can change your career. One boundary can change a relationship. One moment of courage can introduce you to a version of yourself you have never met before. You may never know which small choice becomes the turning point. That's why you should stop underestimating small beginnings. The first step rarely looks like the final destination. A closed door may lead you toward another road. A rejection may force you to develop a skill. A delay may give you time to prepare. A mistake may reveal what you actually need to change. You don't have to call every difficult event good. Some things simply hurt. Some losses are real. Some endings are painful. But you can still choose what meaning you give them. You can decide that the ending is not the end of your story. And that decision matters. Because your past may be part of your story, but it does not have to write every remaining page. So if you have been waiting for your life to finally give you permission to begin, stop waiting. Start with what you can control. Your attention. Your choices. Your habits. Your actions. Your response. Your next step. You don't need to control the entire universe. You need to stop giving your power away to every thought, fear, person, and circumstance that passes through your life. And when you do that consistently, something begins to change. Not because you forced reality to obey you, but because you finally became an active participant in your own life. You stop standing at the edge of the threshold asking whether you're allowed to enter. You breathe. You look forward. And you step through. Your reality does not need a new wish. It needs a new decision. That decision may feel small today, but never forget. Every major chapter of your life once began as something small. A thought. A choice. A conversation. A first step. And maybe this is your first step, not toward becoming someone else, but toward becoming more fully yourself. So take one more breath. Release the need to know exactly when everything will happen. Release the need for constant confirmation. Release the old story that says you are too late. Then ask yourself one final question. What would I choose today if I truly believed my life could change? Don't wait for the answer to feel perfect. Let it be honest. Because the moment you act on that answer, you are no longer just imagining a different future. You are beginning to build it. And there is one final practice you can use to make this shift part of your everyday life. A practice so simple that most people will dismiss it. And that may be exactly why it works so well.